This is a relay project.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jesperson.
We're asking a hard-hitting question on today's episode of Real Talk, and that is, can you advocate for the poor? Can you advocate for the middle class and still like nice things? Tristin Hopper, correspondent for the National Post, is going to join us in just a couple of minutes to talk about a column of his that went viral. Everybody was talking about it across the country. It was basically a week in the life of Jagmeet Singh's Versace bag. You know, the leader of the federal NDP. If you don't know by now, you've not been paying attention to either of the past two federal election campaigns. He drives a BMW. He's got a couple of Rolex watches in his collection, and he dresses well. He might actually be Canada's best-dressed parliamentarian. I mean, he's certainly on the short list, and whether or not he's your flavor of politician, whether or not your political perspectives align with his, I'm hoping today we can have a candid conversation about what matters in the optics of politics and what doesn't. Now, in the optics of politics, of course, there's what's happening down in Calgary this week as well, as that city's mayor, Dr. Jyoti pulled out of her commitment to attend the city's menorah lighting. It was on the 7th of this month at City Hall. She says that the event got a little too political. She says she was misled about the focus of the event, and, well, she just wasn't in a position to feel comfortable attending an event that said it was celebrating support of Israel. She's facing fire for that. We talked about it on the show yesterday, and it prompted feedback from a bunch of you, including Lynn, who's just written us an email like 10 minutes before we started doing the show. I've already replied to Lynn to let her know that she's going to hear her words represented on today's episode. I'm going to ask Tristin what he thinks about it as well. That in just a quick second. But first, we wanted to let you know that if you're in charge of safety training when it comes to your company, if you're looking to get your team the industry's best safety training, Danatech's been Alberta's safety training leader for more than 30 years. Their courses are designed by experts with real on-the-job experience, so they're actually going to make a difference on your team's job site. You can save lost time injuries. You can stay compliant with changing regulations. As you know, that's not an option. You got to do it. Plus, you'll save money on training with Danatech. Big companies across Canada are using Danatech's WMIS, TDG, electrical, and lifting device courses for good reason. And they've got a catalog of more than 150 courses across all industries. If this is resonating with you, if this is right up your alley, you can visit danatech.com today to check out their courses and find out more about bulk discounts. Dawn Braid, in a scathing column in the Calgary Herald, announces that she's not fit to be mayor.
I am really loath to call everybody who's on the wrong side of some issue I have politically an anti-Semite. You keep saying that, and you keep throwing that term out, it ceases to have any meaning. Anti-Semitism is Jew hatred. That is G-damn serious. Don't be using it casually, don't be using it frivolously, and don't be using it frequently.
If I'm running her comms, it's very easy for any politician, let alone a mayor, a premier, a prime minister, to pull out of an event citing a scheduling conflict. Like, that's really easy. And people might say, well, you're lying. Not really. Well, you are, but you're politicking, and lying, there are shades of gray. You create a scheduling conflict, you cite a scheduling conflict, and that's it. I mean, she released a statement basically saying that she was disappointed, the politics of it, she was misled, she can't support it, and that's where I'm like, whoa. Like, I can't understand, and I don't think that the mayor writes her own releases. Whoever wrote that release, I don't understand. Like, there's a lot of ways for me to say I don't want to get in a ring with a rhinoceros without saying, I don't feel like getting gored and getting my ass kicked. I cite a scheduling conflict. Unity, supporting Israel, and Jewish pride. Well, I mean, so you can go, okay, well, supporting Israel, maybe she found that, the mayor found that to be optically inconvenient. I mean, what do you expect? What do you kind of expect it to say?
Pro-Israel means pro the existence of the state of Israel.
That's what you say it. That's what you say it means. That's what it means to you, right?
Yeah.
right? I mean, maybe
What does it mean to you?
Well, I'm just saying, maybe the mayor doesn't see it that way. Maybe the mayor, or maybe someone on the mayor's staff has convinced her that supporting Israel means supporting what's happening in Gaza right now. It means supporting, right? Do you know what I'm saying? So this is why politically, it just, to me, seemed like something they shouldn't have bitten off. And if she wasn't going to attend it, then I know this makes me sound cynical, but it's how politics work. Cite a scheduling conflict and move on. That was me with Charles Adler on Monday's episode of Real Talk as we welcome Tristin Hopper to the show, a national columnist based on the West Coast with Canada's National Post. It's nice to see your face again, man. Welcome back to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me. No one else calls.
No one else calls.
This counts as a human interaction, but I'm basically leaving the house.
Does the Post tell you that you have to have like a minimum amount of human interactions per week? You get to notch this one down?
Oh, have you seen the people who work for the National Post? We have very low standards for what we expect for our employees.
Okay. I'm going to get to Lynn's email in just a second on my exchange with Adler about Mayor Jyoti Gondek and the fire she's facing for pulling out of her involvement in this menorah lighting. What do you think? And pull out your flamethrower if you need to. I mean, pull no punches. What do you think about if I was her chief of staff or if I was her director of comms, my plan where you cite a scheduling conflict as opposed to releasing a lengthy statement basically calling out every Jewish person in Calgary? I mean, that's kind of how it landed.
Yeah, that was kind of a bad. It was sort of the argument I heard. I'm in Victoria, and we were one of the first places to tear down a statue of Sir Johnny MacDonald, and that was about 4 or 5 years ago. And yeah, I heard from a lot of City Hall insiders, and they said, well, it would have been the easiest thing in the world to just say, oh, he's kind of blocking the entrance. We're going to repaint this. We're just going to move this statue out of the way and then accidentally on purpose forget to put it back. That would be really easy. But no, we had to have some huge thing, grandstanding, and invite the press and, cinch him out by his neck. So, yeah, if obviously, you were trying to sort of grandstand and get as much attention out of this as possible. So, she got her wish, a lot of attention. I will note that this is, I was looking at sort of incidents all across the Western world, Europe, North America, of people sort of pulling out of Hanukkah events because they thought it sort of had, political connotations. And there's been incidents sort of like this where someone, some public official maybe peripherally connected to the conflict, doesn't really know much about Hanukkah, will sort of think it's too hot to touch. But I'll say Jyoti Gondek, this is sort of beyond the pale. Nothing has really happened like this to that extreme where she's pulled out and then said this is, basically framed it as some sort of pro-genocide event that she has to avoid at all costs. So yeah, Calgary has sort of come out on top on this one.
Yeah, it was
in terms of how dramatic it became.
Yeah, it feels sort of more important now than ever, and it's like tough position for politicians.
Well, she came out and she said, "Well, I don't want to take a side here. I got to remain neutral." I would contrast that with Germany, where Chancellor Olaf Scholz comes out. He's the first German chancellor. He lights a giant menorah right in front of the Brandenburg Gate, very symbolic. This is, used to be the heart of Nazism. And he says, I am taking a side. I'm on, the side of whatever side is against Hamas as clearly as possible. Now, there's probably people screaming at their screens saying, it's not necessarily a pro-anti-Hamas, but I don't know. I guess it's strange that it was very easy to take a side uncontroversially on this, and she couldn't do it.
Yeah. We'll read a portion of her statement. Johnny has it up on the screen right now for people watching on YouTube. Says the mayor, by way of this statement, it's come to my attention, that the menorah lighting at City Hall, something I have looked forward to attending over the years, has been repositioned as an event to support Israel. She says, when I was asked to speak weeks ago, it was to bring traditional greetings celebrating Hanukkah, the spirit of Calgary's Jewish community. The last minute change goes against the original intention and has left me feeling let down by leadership. I am saddened that this change makes it impossible for me to attend the event.
Swap out every mention of Israel with Ukraine. How many Ukrainian events? It's Alberta. You've got you've got your pierogi suppers and stuff. How many of those in last year, suddenly started having a line? We hope for Ukrainian victory. Something related to the war happening in Ukraine. So, how many people pulled out of a pierogi supper or some traditional Ukrainian event because they said, well, it's politicized now. You guys are mentioning, you're asking me to take a side in the Russia-Ukrainian war, and I feel betrayed. That never happened because that would be crazy. So, I would ask people to consider what's different in this case.
Yeah, well, okay, so we went there briefly on yesterday's show because I think that, of course, you could have all kinds of situations. Like yesterday, our hypothetical was, let's say, a Russian Orthodox church invites a politician to, and again, I apologized yesterday. I'll apologize today. I don't know a whole lot about Russian Orthodox traditions. I don't know.
I think they stand. They don't do pews.
I think they say, yeah, something. I know that, like, kind of the whole reason that the NHL had the Pride jersey problem was Russian players, some of them, Ivan Provorov, talking about his Russian Orthodox tradition. So I suspect they're a little rigid on their progressivism. But I digress. That's not the point. If a Russian Orthodox church is hosting some sort of a Christmas or holiday event or whatever they call it, and a politician that has attended it for years was intending on attending now, but the poster said supporting Russia on the poster, then obviously that politician wouldn't go. And so I wonder if in this case it's the poster from the menorah lighting here that says supporting Israel in the middle that maybe turns off the mayor. But here's my point, and the reason why we only touched on it briefly on yesterday's show, Tristin, and here's real talk, is because as we were doing it, I'm going, we might be walking onto a landmine here. I'm not so convinced that you can compare Palestine and Russia, right? I'm not so sure that it's the same thing. Whereas right now it is the easiest thing in the world for a politician to put a Ukrainian flag up or to put a Ukrainian flag in their bio on Twitter or to wear a Ukrainian lapel pin. You go ahead and try to wear a Russian lapel pin right now, or fly a Russian flag at your office. I mean, you'd be ostracized. You'd have pitchforks and torches outside your office. You could never get away with it. So what's the difference? The difference probably is that the global community, and again, I'm dumbing this down in the shallow end of the pool, but the global end of the community sees the average Palestinian as in a very different circumstance than the average Russian, right? They don't see, perhaps you could draw comparisons between Hamas and Putin. I mean, we should have Harvard PhDs doing that if we're going to try it, but it's
no, not Harvard. But pick one of the other, less anti-Semitic universities.
That's right. Well, who's left? I mean, everybody's under fire right now. But at the same time, politicians will put and are putting Palestinian flags in their Twitter bios. Like, I don't think you can maybe go Ukraine and Israel in a way, but for a lot of people, nobody thinks that Ukraine is the aggressor. Nobody does. But when you're taking a look at the conflict, Israel-Hamas, this war, a lot of people believe Hamas is the aggressor. Look what they did on October 7th. A lot of other people are like, Israel is the colonizer. Israel is the
just
occupier.
a difference in strength. I'm sure if Ukraine was actually able to, take back Crimea and start taking over Russian territory, which I could argue is justified for a number of reasons, people would turn. I think people are just seeing sort of a power differential and sort of making a decision based on that rather than, some of the underlying morality. But if you're comparing them, I mean, the Russia-Ukrainian war has been devastating to the Russian people. Hundreds of thousands of young men sort of drafted and sent into machine gun fire. It would be obscene to host or put up a Russian flag in memory of, all those young men drafted and sent into machine gun fire because they started the war. You could argue that also applies in the Israel-Hamas conflict. Anyway, but supporting Israel on the poster, I guess if it said, hey, by showing up, you support, Israel's plan to, completely crush Hamas or something. I don't know. I assume they put it in there just because this war started by Israel just minding its own business and suddenly having this attempted genocide in the southern border. So I don't know. It seems strange to me that you would ask a demographic community not to acknowledge that in any way, shape, or form at a Hanukkah commemoration. I know we don't know much about Hanukkah. It's Jewish Christmas, but the circumstances of Hanukkah are very similar. This was, it's not like Christmas in which just a baby is born in a manger. I mean,
right.
This was a conflict against the Jews that they triumphed on. So I would argue it's entirely appropriate to mention in the most basic watered down vanilla terms. Oh, by the way, there's a Jewish state, and we're on that side, being Jews. So I don't know. You can argue. You can have Jyoti show up and not mention the conflict. Not take a side. But I mean, some of the rhetoric out there that this is some hyper politicized, pro-Israel crush Gaza rally. I mean, it was a child-friendly event with latkes.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the event itself is one that the mayor should have been at. I don't blame her, and ultimately it's her decision. Like I've not heard from her mouth, but this doesn't strike me. This strikes me as something where the politicians' position, the mayor's position, supersedes whatever their chief of staff or chief strategist is telling them. It doesn't strike me as a position where they say, hey, listen, you could be run out of office for attending this thing. I don't think so. I think if the poster didn't say supporting Israel in a time of war, there would be no problem here. But take yesterday...
You're also giving her the benefit of the doubt that she's not looking for some kind of excuse to pull out of this.
Sure.
And then, put it back on the organizers.
Yeah, I am.
I'm not pulling out of this because I hate Hanukkah. You put the Israel thing on your poster.
Which I think, and my position on this yesterday, and not everybody agrees, but I'm not wavering on it, is that I just think that the statement went way too far. The statement, basically says I was tricked. I mean, there's been responses. Yeah. We cited
those crafty Jews.
Well, and that's so that was the whole thing yesterday. Was there was a statement, I wish I could recall, but we mentioned it in yesterday's episode, where a spokesperson for a significant Jewish organization in Calgary basically said this furthers the stereotype that Jews are conniving, right? That we tricked the mayor into attending the menorah lighting ceremony.
No, it's true. They lure you in with latkes, and then if there's an attempted genocide on them, you took our latke, but you should take a side against
the price.
The pro-terrorist genocide.
Yeah. By the way, somebody says on our live chat that they weren't expecting such sarcasm out of the gates. They say, what a refreshing start with Tristin this morning. So Lynn sent us an email. We got it 10 minutes before you and I started talking today. She says, good morning. I was disappointed by your discussion of the menorah lighting in Calgary. I completely understand Mayor Gondek's decision not to attend because of the mention of Israel in the promotion of the event. She says, I read of the significance of the Festival of Lights, just like you were talking about, Tristin. The Festival of Lights and Hope from Rabbi Sandra Lawson in her Substack. You can check it out, rabbisandra.substack.com. With not one mention of Israel, says Lynn. Hanukkah is a Jewish celebration, one that can surely be celebrated by all people, bringing light and hope into darkness. Lynn says, best wishes to all celebrating light and hope this season, whether they be Jewish, Christian, or other faith traditions. I appreciate that. Just calm, measured, reasonable take from Lynn, the real talker. Here's the flip side of this. The mayor could have easily attended this, and if anybody ripped her for it, if anybody criticized her for it, it's you got to be kidding me. You got to be unhinged, I think, to be targeting Hanukkah celebrations.
And also,
right
what
now.
are you asking of the Jewish community? So, Jewish community is holding. Oh, by the way, we're having our annual festival, the one Jewish holiday that actual non-Jews show up to, because we all think it's Jewish Christmas. It's not actually a major Jewish holiday. We've just decided it is. So this is the one Jewish thing that all Calgarians do every year. So you have a community, some of them have relatives who are in Israel. So, this is something that has affected them directly, and this is all they're thinking about. And they're supposed to hold this major Jewish event. And if you mention the one thing, the country filled with Jewish people that has majorly affected your life and your perceptions of Canada and blah, 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 blah. If you mention that once, it's a politicized event, and I'm going to pull out. So it's strange that they're not even allowed to mention the word Israel. Meanwhile, I sang "O Come All Ye Faithful" the other day. It contains the word Israel.
Yeah. We've got... Yeah, by the way, I don't want that. I did let that land. I'm just trying to do some research on the fly here because Kimberly on our live chat. Tristin, have you heard of Super Chat? People can sprinkle a few bucks our way, and we make sure that their comment is read if it's appropriate. If they have a comment, it's kind of a neat way that they're able to support.
This is something I've been advocating for a long time. Pay for your comments.
Yeah, paying.
I'll take any amount of views.
If you were paid for comments on what you do, you'd be joining us from Maui, buddy. I've seen the comments that your things draw here, but Kimberly says, and I appreciate this, tossing $7 our way, Kimberly. Thank you very much. You just bought Johnny a cold cold pint. She says, can you please address the Israel bonds raffle, which is further down the flyer? Let me see this. I didn't real bonds.
Sure, there are Israel bonds.
Did you see this? Are you familiar with this story? Let me read here. There are people talking about Gondek pulling out of this thing. Including people that are saying the organizers were being protested for celebrating or promoting the fact that they would include a raffle for Israel bonds that activists say will fund the Jewish state's military campaign during what they call a genocide in Gaza. They say that would have been obscene. These are critics. Okay, so Kimberly, I appreciate you putting that on our radar. I'll call the poster back up here
everything
in just a
related
second.
to Israel funds genocide. So, we'll just say that. I mean, Israel bonds, they sold them last year. So this is sort of a feature of the event. Again, this is a Jewish group saying, we're selling bonds for this one Jewish state. So I don't know. I think it says more about you than about the event if you think selling bonds for Israel is somehow an inherently political move.
Well,
so I'm trying to think of a comparison.
Well,
but yeah, it'd be one thing if you had this I don't know, a cutout of a tank and people were throwing money into it. And, if we get enough money, we can buy a tank for the IDF. This is, it's like, it's the equivalent of a Canada savings bonds, but for Israel. So again, you're asking this Jewish group not to acknowledge or support, the one Jewish state in any way, shape, or form, because people may not like this conflict they're currently waging that they didn't start. So I don't know. I find it hard to get upset about selling of Israel bonds, because if it wasn't the Israel bonds, they're going to find some product here that used.
I guess here. Listen, so and shout out to Kimberly, because Kimberly, I had not seen. I've only been seeing.
Yeah, please pay for any comments. I'll take any.
Yeah, well, yeah. If anybody wants to comment on Tristin this morning, you can do so, and we'll guarantee we read it for the small bargain price of $6.99. What do you think? $19.99. We'll repeat it. But shout out to Kimberly, because I hadn't seen this part of. I've only seen cropped parts of the poster. So it goes on, talks about who the MC is, a friend of mine, Sue Dial, a great broadcaster down in Calgary. Mayor Jyoti Gondek's supposed to be there. Obviously, she pulled out. The musicians that'll be there, some school choirs, an Israel bonds raffle, and then soup, latkes, and more. I guess if you wanted to make this like as safe as possible, as tepid as possible, as politically palatable as possible, you could have foregone the Israel bonds raffle, and instead you could have raised money for Calgary's food
because they
bank.
did it last year. So you got to think, you're sitting in a room. It's like, well, we did it last year. It wasn't controversial. Why is it controversial this year?
Obviously, a very different circumstance, right? Israel finds itself in a very different. But listen, let me finish my thought here. Is that by selling the Israel bonds raffle and putting supporting Israel in the poster when Israel is at war, you obviously indicate that you're on Israel's side. But at the same time, what do you expect? It's a Hanukkah celebration. It's gathering Calgary's Jewish community together. Like, I understand that what's happening to Palestinian people, to innocent civilians, to children, to the elderly, it's horrific. The whole thing is horrific. I'll reiterate that again and again and again. But, like, Israel was attacked. Israel faced a horrific terror attack. There are still hostages being held. What the hell do you expect Calgary's Jewish community to do? Like, to pretend like they don't support Israel through this? So, I mean, we're bringing this back to the position, the predicament that Jyoti Gondek finds herself in, but I don't for one second expect Jewish people in Calgary to pretend like they're taking a middle ground on this conflict. That's the most ridiculous thing out of this whole suggestion.
Yeah, and it's only because we're sort of hyper-focused. I can point to any number of examples in which there is, sort of an African conflict or a conflict in South Asia in which you'll have politicians attending an event, and you have stuff that's way more extreme and controversial than supporting Israel, and we're going to sell these, bonds that we sold last year, and nobody takes any notice. So, the argument we often hear for the Jewish community is how come we can't do what everybody else can do because, you don't like how Israel's waging this current conflict.
Yeah, exactly. 100%. Okay, listen, this is a hilarious comment from Sylvia in the chat that just says, is this the topic for the day? In fact, it's not.
No, I was supposed to be talking about Jagmeet Singh.
Yeah. But I just know you and I have done like 30 interviews, and I know that I can throw absolutely anything at you, and you will be insightful and entertaining, so I just didn't worry about it. I didn't think you'd mind. I got that great email from Lynn, and I just thought, I think we got to lead with Gondek. That's been in the news. But let's get to this. We're talking to Tristin Hopper. If you're just joining us, the Mixlr live streaming audio app presented by California Closets. Tristin, of course, a national correspondent for Canada's National Post, and a piece that you published about a week ago, just over a week ago, the headline, "Times are tough. I should have been a Prada." Inside the thoughts of Jagmeet Singh's Versace bag. Absolutely hilarious. Everybody was talking about the column. Congratulations on that. Take us into the story. The federal NDP leader photographed with a bag worth more than most people will spend through the holiday season, to say the least.
Yes, so this is some hard-hitting journalism of me making up dialogue that didn't happen in the guise of a... I actually advocate strongly for this column not to be included in the National Post, but I've been informed it's in line with our fun-loving brand, so I do it. But anyways, often it does quite well, and people seem to like reading news satire, and we don't have to be serious all the time. But yeah, this was a photo taken in Vancouver. Jagmeet Singh, NDP leader, was photographed with a Versace bag. I'm not too up on what Versace bags cost, but that bag is anywhere between $200 and $300 to over $1,000. It's probably in the $200 or $300 range. So this is quite on brand for Jagmeet. He's always sort of like the finer things. He had that rocking chair that was worth a couple $1,000s that he obtained through some sort of weird Instagram promotion with the rocking chair company. He drives BMW. He owns 2 Rolexes. That's something, that always sort of gets to me. So this is constantly pointed out that the leader of the federal NDP, which I will remind everyone is the direct ideological descendant of the Winnipeg General Strike, is sort of into luxury products at a level more than any other politician in Ottawa. So this comes up often. It's strange that you could be a party of the working class, of the voiceless, and be into all these sort of weird luxury goods, and not. There's any number of reasons why you need to, sort of why you might need to fly first class, but something with a Versace bag where, or a Rolex, where you could get away with a dime star alternative and it's still going to be able to tell the time and carry your stuff. So it's in the unnecessarily luxurious. So there's any number of reasons as a politician, you just need to spend more money than the average person because you're busy and you need to get places quickly. But people are focusing on the bag and on the Rolex and on the BMW because you could drive a Corolla or use a Walmart tote bag or use a Timex, but you're not doing that.
Yeah, I'm just currently searching Versace.com.
The bag sells for about $7.99 on retail sites, but if you buy it directly from Versace, it's around $1,200. So
$1,200.
Jeez,
yeah,
that's way higher than I thought.
Well,
so, anyway,
and I'm looking here, like on Versace.com. Like his is not like a recent model. This is stuff that doesn't matter at all.
It's a tote bag.
It's a tote bag. So I'm looking like a Versace computer bag is $3,700. If anybody's looking for a great Christmas gift, the denim tote bag is on sale right now, down from $2,700. For just 1,300 Canadian dollars, Tristin. The other men's tote bags, 2,400, 1,200, 2,400. Okay, so you get the idea. It's probably
that's a lot of money for a bag.
It's a lot of money for a bag. But here's the question: like, who cares? Like, who cares?
I think it's reasonable to I think it's reasonable to assert that if you're taking up political causes that are ostensibly representative of the working class, and you live in a world in which, I need something to carry my stuff. $1,200 seems like a reasonable amount. That you're not intensely connected to what those issues might be. And potentially that's reflected in NDP policy. I mean, their sort of main policy now is that groceries are too expensive, so we're going to yell at grocers until prices go down.
Do you really think, and hi, devil's advocate here, do you really think that Pierre Poilievre understands the struggles of the common person right now?
No, I don't. But when you're shelling out $1,200 for a bag, that indicates you're not even trying. There's nothing in your head saying like, maybe I should just use what the normies use This is obviously not the bag that my constituency would use. I should see what their bag feels like.
Yeah, but I just think
Because,
like
I'm just a journalist. I work for the National Post. Obviously I could get away with just living this sort of privileged bubble existence, and I'm sure it wouldn't get in the way of doing my job. But if you're NDP leader, you should probably consider riding the bus every once in a while. Having a taste of what the life your constituents live, because that's probably going to inform how you do business.
Yeah, so, I just think that
when you're getting a $1,200 Versace bag, you're aggressively saying, "Oh yeah, that's not me. I'm up here and you're down there."
I mean, the optics of it are interesting. I mean, Pierre Poilievre never would carry a bag like that. I think he's too smart to do it. I think that his team is too smart to let him do it. I'd be curious to know what, like, Poilievre, he's kind of undergone this image makeover over the past while, and I would be, this is a sincere and serious point. I would be really
the only
curious to know, like, where does he get his suits?
Ever. Yeah.
Where does he get his suits? Like, you can get, like, does he go to Tip Top and is Pierre Poilievre wearing $300 suits? I doubt it. He's, I would imagine, like, the average, like, tailored, beautiful men's suit is like, $1,500 to $2,500. I'd be curious to know if he is, and if that would be unpalatable to people. But when you're representing, and I don't want to say that conservatives are representing the rich, because the Poilievre would never agree with that. They're going to campaign, they're going to win an election on speaking for the average
statistically,
middle class
they increasingly
person.
Aren't.
And
maybe this Versace bag is
maybe we get into that. But I'm just saying the conservative leader would never do it. A union leader is always going to show up to union meetings or rallies with steel-toed boots that they haven't really worn in 15 years. And everybody knows that they're making $350,000, $400,000 a year, but they're going to pretend like they're all fighting for that 80-cent an hour raise. It all comes with the territory. So the Jagmeet Singh thing, I get why wearing the Rolex is a tough look. I get why driving the BMW is a tough look, but also, like, the guy comes from a background where he has the wealth, he has the privilege, he has the opportunity, and he has the taste to wear them. The question is, does he nail his feet to the floor as a politician for doing it? The answer probably is yes.
So, I mean, if you're in the audience thinking, well, he should be allowed to do what he wants. I mean, imagine if he was a religious leader. So if he ran sort of a large mega church, and he's driving a Rolls Royce to the church, and preaching sort of preaching to a disproportionately sort of poor and vulnerable constituency. It would be dissonant if he was aggressively trying to look like he's not even part of that constituency. So making choices like buying an obscenely expensive bag when you could have easily gotten away with a lower class bag.
You should also point out, and I don't know if it's relevant or not, but he didn't like show up to a rally with the bag. He was captured. He was caught on camera with the bag getting into a vehicle. So I don't know if that makes a difference. I mean, obviously politicians, everybody for that matter, you're on camera 24 hours a day when you're out in public, especially if you're a recognizable person. You should assume that you'll be photographed. You should assume that whatever you're doing could be made public.
I do think it will have an effect professionally. So, I live a terrifyingly cheap existence at times. I'll try and buy expired food. I'll go to really alarming lengths to save money. And I would say that side of my personality it's yielded any number of news insights that maybe a more sheltered Toronto journalist wouldn't have. So when you have an NDP leader who is sort of actively deciding not to live in the world that he pretends to represent, I think he's going to have some blind spots. And if you look at the statistics, you mentioned, conservatives traditionally being seen as the party of rich people. Statistically, when you sort of do polls of Canadians by wealth, they're going in droves away from the NDP towards the Conservatives. So you have to ask why that's happening. It's not entirely because Jagmeet Singh is carrying a Versace bag, but you could argue it's a factor.
Yeah. Oh, Johnny found this.
So there's the
specific
bag. This is on a resale site, American, $750, about $10.50 Canadian.
I get it. This is your Christmas. Is this you subtly letting me
I'm
know
trying
what you're
to
hoping
poke the
for
bear
Christmas? That would be. I mean, if you want to be like, if you're working on Parliament Hill, that would be a sweet flex to show up to news conferences with that bag.
Right.
Tristan, I think that is. It's kind of interesting, and like you just what you just said resonates, like not even pretending. And that's an interesting thing. I want to circle back to this. Can we keep you
I'm leading the. Okay, sorry.
No. I feel like we're running up against the clock on the time we asked you for, but I'd love to keep you longer. Do you have any obligations? Can I keep you for 15 more minutes? Like, what's your morning looking like? Do you have to like get kids to school? I know I don't want to put you in a tough spot. Never mind that we're doing this live. Thousands of people.
There's a crying baby that might factor.
There's a crying baby. Okay. Do we need to attend to the crying baby now? Do you want to take 5 minutes and come back to us?
I'm sure I can finish the original time slot.
Yeah, there's a whole thing about like babies can soothe
I'm sure the baby will understand.
The baby will just explain to the baby, national audience, one of Canada's most downloaded shows, real quick. Quick, Johnny, why don't we fit this in real quick, and then we'll get to some of these comments. But Tristin, more importantly, I want to ask you retweeted something recently. I want to get into it because it's fitting nicely here with people. Maybe if people are migrating NDP supporters to the Conservatives and that dynamic. You also reiterated a comment about moderates, like middle of the road folks fleeing the left. And I think that that's interesting as well. I'd love to touch on that with you in just a quick second. Let's get to this. This conversation doesn't happen without partners of ours like our friends at California Closets. And right now, this time of year, what an absolutely perfect time of year. You're in a position, you're trying to find the perfect gift for a loved one, someone you're sharing life with, sharing space with, and both of you know what your biggest issue is. What's your biggest stressor? It's the fact that you have no organization into your home. Could be the garage, could be the storage room, could be the family room, could be the bedroom, whatever it is. California Closets is providing custom storage solutions for your entire home. And one of the coolest parts about it, the consultation is free. What a neat way to celebrate the holiday season. Gift a consultation and maybe some budget toward a California Closets makeover. You can get that idea started today at californiaclosets.ca. Our friends at Grand Dog Essentials Quality Raw Food want to remind you that through the month of December, they've got a special going on for real talkers. You go to granddog.ca and you can see that through the month of December, the Chicken Raw Pet Food Blend, that 40-pound box, is on sale when you use the discount code December 2023, all one word, at checkout. The blend is suitable for cats and dogs, which is awesome. And the best part about it, the nutritional elements, it uses entire Alberta-raised chickens sourced from human-grade facilities. You're not going to get better quality when you're feeding your pets with Grand Dog Essentials quality raw food. Don't forget, they deliver to your door in Calgary, Edmonton, and Central Alberta. And if you're looking for a new opportunity in 2024, if you're an electrician or an apprentice almost on your way to your ticket, Kubi Renewable Energy is hiring. If you're ready to elevate your career in the dynamic world of solar energy, you can join the team at Kubi Renewable Energy. They're not just building solar systems, they're cultivating the next generation of solar experts. They've got a fast-paced work environment powered by experienced professionals eager to share their wisdom. Check out the careers link at kubienergy.ca. Tristin Hopper, our guest, a national columnist based out of Victoria, BC, with the National Post. Let me ask you about this tweet, and we'll wrap with this. We're grateful that you're able to make time for us, Tristin, but I noticed that you put something out there, and I just want to find it here. You know which one I'm talking about. It was the assertion that right now, basically, moderates are fleeing the left, like whether or not they're made to feel uncomfortable, where sort of the sentiments are going, whether it's some of the language that the so-called left is using. It seems like there's some people that are getting a little bit less comfortable with it. Claire Lehman made the original note on Twitter, or X, says, I'm starting to see quite a few center-left people distance themselves from so-called leftists due to all the genocidal pro-terrorist rhetoric. I mean, some loaded language there. Says a realignment is finally happening. And then you say you're getting a similar sense. Where do you see it, and why do you think it's happening?
I'm thinking, like, if I can use a hyper-local example, I'm in Victoria, and you may remember our museum, which is a very good museum, unlike the Royal Alberta Museum.
Whoa!
A few months ago, this was the big provincial project. They were going to take the museum, and the museum has some issues. I mean, it doesn't really get into the smallpox epidemic. It didn't mention Indian residential schools. So there had been consultations with First Nation groups saying, "Oh, we just change the museum, change the Indigenous, sort of make us part of the story, represent us the same way you represent the settler community, the Chinese Canadian community, treat us as normal people, please. So the province said, okay, we've heard you loud and clear. We're going to completely dismantle everything of this beloved museum because it's all dripping with colonialism and racism. We'll completely strip it to the bones and then rebuild it for $1 billion. And then everybody sort of flipped out at this. So the museum has sort of dialed back from that. They realized, it's got this cool diorama of Captain Cook's ship. It's got Captain Vancouver's ship. It's got this awesome diorama of an old town. So they've realized we went too far. Completely tearing apart this nice diorama of an old town that you can walk through because we got it into our heads that's, the mere representation of a turn of the century BC town is somehow racist. And, but anyway, they've sort of dialed that down. They've reopened Old Town and they're sort of, dialing back the crazy. I think I'm seeing this. We can all point to any number of examples. This happened in the 70s. We all forget about this. But after the 1960s, you had some extremes. Things got real extreme in the mid 70s. And then there was sort of a ratchet back. So I think there's any number of people in academia who have sat through meetings about having sort of race segregated classes as an anti-racism tool, who have had weird DEI sessions, who are sort of saying, I think we've gone a bit too far. And that's, particularly exacerbated over the last 2 months. You've seen some really extremist rhetoric coming out of some sort of high level places. And so what I think is going to happen is you're never going to have this reckoning of people saying, okay, we took things way too far. We lost our minds. You're just going to quietly sort of forget that ever happened. So I would compare it historically to the 1970s. You got a Jonestown, you get the Weather Underground is trying to blow up Congress. And you're thinking, okay, maybe we went a bit too far with this. Let's just kind of calm down. But so I would call it quiet revolution in Quebec. Everybody just wakes up one morning, stops going to church. I think all the so-called wokery, I think a lot of it is just going to sort of disappear and we're going to forget that it happened.
But do you think that it swings back like to the middle? Or do you think that things like, does the pendulum continue that momentum? Like it's one thing to talk about how society or people's
I don't think it's going to switch too far. So I often ask people to consider what would it look like if it completely swung the other direction?
Yeah.
So you had a conservative version of anti-racism training where, you're a bureaucrat and you have to sit through Thomas Sowell training or, you mandatory reading of Adam Smith. I don't know. I don't think that's ever going to happen. I mean, it may seem extreme just to return to zero because people forget how far we've moved in the last 8 years. Just in 2015, something basic saying we understand trans people exist, but there are two genders and obviously transitioning and becoming a lot has happened in the last 8 years. So it may seem extreme to return to the mean, but I don't see us getting as nutty on the right as we are on the left.
I don't know, man. It looks like Trump's getting elected again, and you could have suggested that Joe Biden and I'll be honest, I'd be voting for the Democrats if I was American right now, but I don't think Biden's a great candidate at all. Actually, I think he's a terrible candidate, to be honest with you. I think that there's two terrible choices, but the United States of America, if you look at polling in some of the big swing states right now, it looks like the U.S. is swinging back. And you can't just say to the Republican, it's not like a normal Republican. This is the most abnormal candidate in American history, probably.
Well, that's what happens when you get rid of your king. You just lose your mind with all that democracy. We didn't do that. We'll be much more moderate.
Yeah. Hey, man, we got to let you go. I hope that we haven't created too much disturbance on the home front. It's always wonderful to connect with you. Wanted to do it before Christmas, and it's great to see your face. Thanks for this, and keep up the great work.
You too.
Awesome. That's Tristin Hopper, columnist with the National Post. You can follow him on Twitter at Tristin Hopper. And, of course, you can subscribe to his first reading newsletter as well.
Does not like our museum. I'll tell Tristin, we also have an aeronautical museum here.
Oh, yeah.
On the north side of
the
Edmonton.
Aviation Museum, which I think has been looking for a new home for a while.
Yeah.
They were supposed to. Have you ever gone through there?
I have.
There's these old timers. These basically former, I guess they're either former Air Force mechanics or just body shop professionals or just handy folks that the majority of them are retired, not all of them. and they pour hundreds and hundreds of volunteer hours into rebuilding and restoring these vintage historic aircraft.
Yeah, they've got one right out front when you drive by.
It's unbelievable. They have like all kinds of like old fighter jets, and the ones I love are like the Bush planes, and the ones that have been used to fight wildfires through the years and everything.
Yeah.
The ones that have landed in like Alaska and the Northwest Territories in very dangerous conditions, and they do a great job of telling the stories. They show too the garb that the pilots used to wear.
Yeah.
Like Wap May and all these great pilots from back in the day. And you realize like these were like open cockpits, and they're basically wearing leather jackets. These people were legends.
But the reason I bring it up is like you'd think if a museum was going to be shut down, it would be a museum about articles of equipment that facilitate, war.
Yeah.
But nobody's crying about the Aeronautical Museum.
Yeah. Oh, well, yeah, I don't know. That's not a war museum, though, really.
Well, you know what I mean, though.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to celebrate fighting Hitler in the Third Reich.
Very easy.
We should have. I did want to be, because we did ask Tristin for a certain amount of time. He's a family guy. He's got to be, so I didn't want to keep him too long.
Yeah, I could see him.
I did wonder what was up with the unsolicited shot at the Royal Alberta Museum. I think maybe he's confused, and he was trying to make fun of Edmonton's downtown library, which is the Stanley Milner Library. Is an architectural disaster, but that's just my opinion.
Drive by it every day.
I wanted to note that Aket, I hope I'm pronouncing the handle correctly in our live chat, says, you guys, this is like Obama's tan suit type discourse. Great reference. I would disagree just because you remember this whole thing about people were like critics of Obama. I mean, they were critical of everything.
They didn't wear like blue, black, or gray.
And you can always spot them because they never refer to him as Barack Obama. He's Barack Hussein Obama. They got to get the Hussein in there. But they couldn't. He was unpresidential. He wasn't fit for office. He wore a tan suit. You know what they hate? They hate that he's as cool as Michael Jordan.
Right.
They basically hate that if there wasn't limits on terms for presidents, Barack Obama would be president for 30 years. Yeah. They basically did. They don't. The critics don't like that. But here's the difference. I think is that the Jagmeet Singh thing. Again, is it that serious that he carries a Versace bag, that he has 2 Rolexes, that he drives a BMW? Like, it's not the most serious thing in the world when we have like a housing crisis, when people can't afford to feed their families, when we have like obviously environmental and climate crises. There's bigger fish to fry than Jagmeet Singh's tote bag. But optically, when the leader of a party perpetuates an optical issue, it's a political problem for the party, right? For the party's viability, for the party's fundraising, for the party's growth, for the party's membership retention, like all of these things. And so that's why I think it's interesting. And also on a show like this, where we can quite frankly take as much time as we want to explore an issue and just, go on and go to the live chat and chew the fat a little bit. These are the types of things that I think most people are interested in talking about. Like, we can talk about the carbon tax and should it be raised by $15 a ton and all that kind of stuff. But every once in a while, somebody's going to tune out to that and say, can we just talk about real life stuff, like whether or not a so-called socialist politician should have a $2,000 handbag?
It's the optics of it. Especially nowadays, affordability is the number one issue. Look, Singh, I love your vibe. I love your fashion style. But maybe just leave the Versace, the Gucci, the Rolexes at home for just a year right now until we figure out a way to make, life more affordable for Canadians.
Yeah, and then I guess also is he supposed to?
I don't knock him for
maybe
owning
he is,
it.
but like, is he supposed to? I guess he is kind of supposed to pretend like he doesn't like nice things. I mean, like you can't be. I mean, I'm just trying to think, like, what's the flip side, though? Do we? And I said this the other day facetiously, but like, do we want him wearing like old burlap sacks, like old like coffee bags? Like you don't want him to pretend like he doesn't have style, pretend like he doesn't have taste.
You brought up like Barack Obama. Like, even when the Obamas went out with like Jay-Z and Beyonce, he's still just wearing a suit. He's not wearing.
I love that you're trying to do.
You know what I mean, though. He's Obama's not throwing on gold chains and Rolexes. He's
flying private with Jay-Z and Beyonce.
I know, and he's wearing very nice suits that obviously cost a bunch. But it's the extras that kind of the optics are like, do you really need those extras? But at the same time, we talked about this before we went on air. Politicians are allowed to live a little too. They're allowed to have a few nice things to make them feel good. I don't knock them. And again, we looked at the bag, $800. American, 1,000 Canadian. It's not like he's walking around like Some purses, some bags, you saw them on the site, 10 grand, 20 grand.
Somebody on
they're crazy.
here, who was it? I wish I could give you credit on this because you helped me learn something new today. Gosh, well, you know who you are. I apologize. There's a lot happening in the chat, so it's going fast. I've lost your comment, but I did Google this. Somebody said it's a Versace bag. It's not the end of the world. They said it's not like it's a Birkin bag.
Are crazy.
Do you know Birkin bags? So I didn't know until I saw whoever it was in the chat. Credit to you. But so I Googled, as Tristin was talking, I Googled Birkin bags. Are you familiar with these? You can buy them at Hermes in Paris. Yeah. So it says that the Birkin bag can range from $10,000 to $2 million.
The resale on bags in the States is crazy too. Like
what?
Versace, Gucci, Birkin, like when you have like one that's been discontinued or is 20 years old that's in incredible condition, it can be ridiculous. And I only know this, shout out my partner JC because she watches Real Housewives and all those reality
shows. These are the bags they have?
They collect these like retro vintage bags, and some of them when they talk about them, I paid $45,000 for this. And it's a bag. It's a leather bag. That's all it is. So I don't think $1,000 bag is that much. But you're right. When you're out just going to work, like he's dressed down and stuff like that. Yeah. You're gonna get caught on camera. People are gonna snap photos of you, and you gotta deal with what
you
got to
just while you're the leader of the federal NDP, you got to pretend like that's not your thing. I guess you got to put away. I mean, I'm wearing a nice watch today. It's just a tiny portion. This is in the hundreds, not the thousands.
Look at this guy.
And look at this bad
talking
boy.
about affordability with his gold watch.
But this watch, I've had it for almost 15 years now, and it's less than $1,000. A Rolex, you're not getting into a Rolex, I don't think, for less than 20.
You can have a few.
I'm pretty sure they're more than that. So you can wear a nice watch. And wouldn't it be a great flex for Jagmeet Singh if he wore a flashy watch like what I'm wearing today, and he got asked about it by a cynical reporter, and he got to say it was $5.99.
Yeah, exactly.
Wouldn't that be great? Or I saw somebody else in the chat joking around, well, maybe his bag was a knockoff. And then people making points as well. What if it was a gift?
Resale, a gift,
Although politicians can't, it'd have to be from family. They can't accept those gifts.
That's true.
Unless you're in Alberta, where the UCP have lifted the limits on gifts that politicians can receive. I've quietly wondered, and now I shall do it aloud, if that was prompted in part by my question of the Premier. The last time she was on the show, do you remember this? It was right after the Heritage Classic when the NHL was at Commonwealth Stadium outdoors in Edmonton. The Oilers beat the Flames, no big deal. And I asked her, is it true that the ethics commissioner prohibited you from attending the Heritage Classic? And we were the only ones to ask her that question because we had the exclusive inside scoop. And she let us know that was indeed true. And I told her that I thought that was ridiculous. Some of you didn't like it, but I think that that's ridiculous. If the political leader of a province can't accept the invitation from the NHL commissioner to hang out together and attend a game as they're trying to get an arena built down in Calgary. But anyway, a couple of weeks later, the UCP announces that. I don't know. Draw your own conclusions.
She got to accept that heat pump live on TV too, so maybe that's...
You know what? I bet you, and you're joking, and that's a great reference.
She couldn't have unless they did it.
She couldn't have. Right? Because what would
thought of that
what's a
immediately.
heat pump? Probably $1,500. I don't know.
Of course.
It's probably $1,500 bucks.
Gift.
My guess would be. These conversations, and just a second, a couple of your emails, none of them kind to us, and that's great because you're holding our feet to the fire, and we love it. But we don't have these conversations without the support of friends like Friesen Brothers, who want to remind you that you can order your Ukrainian-inspired Christmas dinner box right now if you'd love to have a Christmas feast fit for royalty, but you don't feel like doing all the work yourself. You'd rather spend quality time with your family. You can gather your loved ones together and just let them know the Christmas dinner is going to be ready as soon as it heats up in the oven. Spend more time with your family and friends and let Catering by Friesen Brothers impress your guests with a chef-prepared, Ukrainian-inspired Christmas dinner box. It comes with all the staples you'd expect, plus you can customize it, add on the extras. You can learn more by checking out cateringbyfriesen.com. We're trying to give you gift ideas for the person that's difficult or impossible to buy for. if it's your partner, if it's your spouse, heck, if it's your parents, why not gift them a consultation with Eden Landscaping? We all know there's that one person in the family that has ideas on what we could do to improve our outdoor space, whether that's a water feature, a new retaining wall. Who doesn't want an outdoor kitchen? Eden Landscaping does it all. And if you want shovels in the ground in the spring or even the summer, the best way to ensure that you stick to that timeline is to start the design conversation today. You can find Eden Landscaping, a custom builder with more than 20 years of amazing experience, online at landscapeedmonton.ca. And we want to mention as well our friends at Complete Care Restoration. So cool to find out just a short time ago that they're the only restoration company in the province of Alberta to be BMO Climate Champ certified. That means that they're keeping as much material as they can out of the landfill. A lot of companies, this doesn't even occur to them. They get the big roll-off bin in front of your house or your business, whatever it is they're cleaning up. Could be a fire site, could have been a flood there. Maybe it's just a bathroom or a kitchen renovation, and all that material is going to the landfill, right? Well, not if Complete Care Restoration's on the job. They're proud to let you know that they average 71% of those materials being recycled. They're keeping material out of the landfill. It's just one of the ways that they're helping out planet Earth at Complete Care Restoration. You can find them online at completecarerestoration.ca.
Tracy on the chat says, and yet we carry around $1,200 phones in our pockets and nobody bats an eye. I was just thinking about this yesterday, Ryan. The new iPhone 15, I was looking to upgrade from my 14. Just to buy it outright is $23.49.
$23.49.
I never realized this. I mean, I do, but you don't think about it. You're holding $2,000 in your hand every day when you're looking at Instagram or whatever.
Or leaving it in your unlocked locker at the gym, or
crazy.
In your bag.
It's crazy.
I feel like a bad dad because, anytime that like little Noah Bear, our baby, wants to he's fascinated at whatever he can reach on the table, whatever he can pick up, and he wants to pick up my phone. And I'm always like, no. I'm like, no. Because he also loves to pick things up and throw them. And I'm like, I want you to explore the world around you, kiddo, but get your hands off my phone. We had an interesting couple of emails land in our inbox, and we wanted to get to these today. So Travis and Lauren, here you go. This from Travis yesterday, who said, Jespo, this email's been building for a while. I think it was our conversation with Adler yesterday that kind of tipped him off. You know what? Why don't we go to the highlight on that first so we can set the table? We recognize not everybody catches every episode of Real Talk, but we were talking about COP28. We were talking about climate alarmism. We were talking about when you lose the general public with all the doomsday prophecies, but also, on the flip side, how do you ignore the fact that human life on planet Earth is directly threatened? That's a fact. You can argue me on it, but my mind's made up. We're on a limited time frame, just like the dinosaurs were, and we're bringing it upon ourselves. So how or where do you find the middle ground? To Travis's email in a sec, but first, here's Adler yesterday.
We know that the reserves in the ground are much higher than what we can safely burn and still keep a stable climate. So that means there's one of two things that's going to happen. Either governments are actually going to come to some kind of agreement that we can't do that, in which case those reserves are all overvalued and this is a bad investment, or civilization collapses and we won't burn those fuels anyways because we won't have markets and systems to burn them.
At that point, the conversation's over. Because if you ask me, the simple question, do you want to leave it all in the ground? I say, are you kidding me? No. I wonder if you end up losing people when you do that. You get the people who are hardcore for sure, but I wonder if you lose the people in the gray zone. You're also going to be a chump. Because if you leave it in the ground, others don't leave it in the ground. Yeah. They're selling to your former customers. So that's all you're doing. You've got clients here. You're just tossing your clients over to somebody else. I mean, what have you actually accomplished? I know you can feel good about yourself. You can feel righteous, I suppose. It's a waste of time. I don't even think Joe Vipon believes that if you leave all of it in the ground in Alberta and other provinces in Canada will never again see a wildfire.
Listen, I'm going to land in the middle on this, and that's not a coward's position. That's a normal position, I think, to take on this, is that we don't immediately stop drilling. We don't immediately shut down our energy sector. That's ludicrous. It's not feasible. It's not intelligent. It's like there's a million reasons why no. But also, We do have to do some things. We do have to do something.
We disrespect the planet every day. I'm not trying to say that it's the end of civilization, because I think when you do say that, it's the end of the conversation. That's my only criticism of Dr. Vipond. He's got so much to offer, but when he uses words like that, I think a lot of people check out.
Nobody's helping anybody if there's no economic activity and if everybody's unemployed. Like, that's a pretty obvious thing to say.
That's
Johnny,
one reason you can't leave it in the ground. One reason you can't destroy the fossil fuel industry, because that's what fuels the next industry.
Yeah.
It's the present that fuels the future. Killing off the present, as I say, makes some people feel good, but it doesn't do any good.
That was Charles Adler on our most recent episode of Real Talk, responding to Dr. Joe Vipond, who joined us on our most recent Real Talk Roundtable, live from COP28 in Dubai. I love that roundtable, by the way. You can check it out. So Travis writes in, earmuffs, kids. He says, you and Adler, fuck, have you two gotten painful to listen to? Travis says, and it's all caps. Travis says, both of you saying we need to do something for climate change and believing it's real, but then you spend 10 fucking minutes complaining about doing anything. And plastic straws, says Travis. I should have saved this for the flamethrower. How the fuck do plastic straws even register on your first world complaint list? Have a problem? Don't drink it as slow as a toddler. Travis says, I understand that when activists say that we're in dire straits and it's apocalyptic, they can shut people down and folks will stop listening, but we have to start moving with some urgency and doing something. Also, please stop carrying water for Danielle Smith. It's clear every time she's brought up. I'm a longtime listener, as I love the diverse interviews, but fuck, he says, lately it's painful. That from Travis. We appreciate you sharing. We do agree, and I'll just say I agree. The royal we agree that the situation is very serious and that we need to do something. The question is, what's the right thing to do? I don't know if you happen to see former American Vice President Al Gore absolutely roasting the COP28.
Oh yeah, I saw that, yeah.
He basically says, nobody's taking this seriously. Yeah. There's nothing coming out of this climate convention that's worth its weight, and we're not doing enough. This from the guy behind the documentary, of course, An Inconvenient Truth. So there is that general sense that there's not enough being accomplished at COP28. We heard from the UN Secretary General on yesterday's episode of Real Talk talking about how we're minutes away from midnight when it comes to the planet hitting that goal of keeping the temperature rise below 1.5 degrees Celsius. So the question is, what do you do? And the answer for different folks differs. A lot of people believe that it's carbon capture. A lot of people believe, most people believe, you got to reduce emissions. Some people believe that basically, there's no need to slow down the fossil fuel industry at all in transition. And then I think that the average person, at least this is me speaking, recognizes that there's a period of transition. I think this is where most logical people land. And I think that this is where the big energy companies, you may refer to them as the oil companies, land as well. And that is that there is a current global demand. As a matter of fact, global demand for oil is rising right now. But there's a horizon that's approaching. And whether that's 15 years from now or 50 years from now, at some point, we won't be burning fossil fuels anymore. And future generations will look back in somewhat a sense of disbelief that we used to burn fossil fuels like we did. So you see energy companies investing in new technology. That's a good thing. There's probably some bridge fuels. Obviously, there's a lot of talk about stuff like natural gas. We've explored that on this show. And of course, a lot of folks will want the conversation to move toward things like hydrogen and nuclear power and the like. So we'll continue to have those conversations, Travis, and real talkers like you. We just love your passion, number one, and the fact that you take the time to send us emails. You know what the worst part is? When a conversation turns somebody off, and instead of writing into the show to say how they feel about it, they just never listen again. Mm-hmm. That's worst case scenario,
We don't
right?
want that.
We don't want that.
No, not at all.
We welcome your emails. They don't always have to be scratching us and
Yell at
patting
us.
us on the back, scratching us behind the ears, right? Go ahead and yell at us. All caps will reflect it when we read it.
Swear.
Yeah, well, we don't need. Does anybody need any more encouragement to swear?
I love the cursing.
I see somebody's Alyssa's chirping me for my pronunciation of what was this store? Hermes? Herme? I don't know. Do you know? It's like a luxury
I
store.
believe it's pronounced Hermes.
Hermes? Is it? Well, hey, but doesn't that make me look like the everyman? I'm the everyman. I can't pronounce
There you
places
go.
I can't afford to shop, right? I don't even know how was it Lamborghini? No. Okay. And then this from Lauren, and you're in the crosshairs on this one too, Johnny. So yeah, thought we would wrap with this one because this is good. But Lauren starts with season's greetings. Right back at you. She says, I heard Ryan and John's recent discussion around, in quotes, houselessness. Do you remember this? We were talking about homelessness, and you were talking about somebody that you saw on the train.
Yeah.
And she said it seemed to mostly be a cheerleading session for the police, says Lauren. Says the Edmonton cops, we're getting local here, don't need an airplane, which they neglected to tell citizens that they purchased was only disclosed through a Freedom of Information request. They killed 2 people last week and immediately suggested publicly that there were weapons involved, while this incident is supposedly under investigation by an independent body. I'm putting the emphasis on what she has in quotes. I won't get too into that situation, but ACERT is investigating. It was an officer-involved shooting. There was a fatality. Police say that they discovered a BB gun type handgun replica on the scene, but there seemed to be some questions around when it was discovered, where it was discovered, whether or not anybody was holding it, and we don't know the details on that yet, or at least they've not been made publicly available. Back to Lauren's email. She says, policing is hard, and the police have helped me more than once when I called them, but the law and order approach to the many folks living outdoors in our city is not going to address root causes, one of the most pervasive of which is extreme poverty. You know, this show is seeking to understand, which is great. You're definitely part of the way to getting it, but you've missed a huge part of the story. The guy that Johnny talks about on the LRT with no shoes on is not going to get a break by giving more money to the cops by getting a ticket. Not giving him a ticket, I guess, is a start, but seriously, he has nowhere to go. If he can't even get income support from the province, he might have $700 a month for everything. There's no housing anywhere that he can afford. He has no household goods, no warm clothing, nowhere warm to sleep, no access to a bathroom, let alone a shower, no food, no proper drinking water. How can he even start to help himself? Lauren, you're 100% right. Says the lack of support for him and thousands of people like him across the country reflects our society's priorities, and it's appalling, she says. She says, think of the Edmonton police budget as a giant $425 million bowl of ice cream. Defunding the police to me doesn't mean that there should be no police. That's ridiculous. It means taking some of the ice cream out of that giant bowl and directing it to things like affordable housing. Why can't we build a whole bunch of housing on the large number of empty lots everywhere, single rooms, shared bathrooms, hire a couple of people to cook and a couple others to help people deal with other issues? I mean, it sounds simple, Lauren, might not be. She says it would be way cheaper and way more effective than what we're doing right now. We're not doing it because we don't have the political will. Nobody wants this housing in their neighborhood. Bingo. It currently takes millions of dollars and many years to build a few hundred units. Meantime, people are living in tents through the winter. Some die in fires. Some have their limbs amputated from frostbite, and then they're sent back to the situation they just came out of, with no bathroom, no food. I guess this must be okay with all of us because it happens every winter. We spend millions of dollars for so-called emergency winter shelters every year that keep people in perpetual misery, and then they're sent back outside every spring because there's still nowhere for them to go. We've been doing this for years. The problem's only gotten worse. Maybe we could have some real talk one day about why that is. She signs off, your friend Lauren. Great email.
Well, thank you, Lauren. And I would say if you listen to the show, we're not necessarily cheerleaders for the police. There are some instances where, especially that one where I said, hey, this is the bare minimum. This is something I like to see instead of someone just getting kicked off a train. I will say that I do have friends who are police officers. I was talking to you about that last week. I have friends who are EMS. I also have friends who have battled drug addiction. I have one friend specifically from high school back in the hometown I grew up in who battled houselessness, who a very prominent hockey player who had a bright future ahead of him, lost everything, including access to his child from drug addiction and stuff like that. So I wouldn't say I'm a cheerleader for the police. I was just seeing something that, I thought was going to go a negative route and it went the other way. But I will say that I very much agree with that email that getting someone a bus transfer and some shoes isn't going to raise them up out of poverty. But I'll counter that by saying it's not the police's job to solve poverty in the city as well. So.
Yeah, and in the moment, what do you expect somebody to do, right? In the moment,
I think they did the best they could.
People can do the best
And
they
that's
can
all I wanted
in
to
that
see.
moment. And I appreciate, so we will read the criticism on the show. We're more inclined to read the criticism than the praise. We appreciate the praise. I have a note here to thank Scott for his $25 super chat contribution the other day. Don't think that we didn't notice it, Scott. We sure appreciate that. It's not all about the money either. We appreciate, some of you have sent us Christmas cards. You sent them to Mercer Warehouse, which we sure appreciate. Some of you have sent us kind notes on email. That means a lot to us, but we want to read the criticism out loud, and we want to read it on the show because we believe that it furthers those conversations. So when somebody says, you're carrying water for Danielle Smith all the time, if that lands that way with you, then I want to address that with you. I want to talk about that with you. I think there's a lot of things that Danielle Smith is doing, that her office is doing, that are absolute lunacy. I mean, we've talked about that. The Alberta pension plan, when have I ever spoken even remotely favorably about that? And Alberta Police Force, I don't think it's a smart idea. I think it's a waste of hundreds of millions of dollars, and I've spoken upfront about that. I think that the response to some of the climate change stuff is insufficient, but there's also things that Danielle Smith is doing that are an improvement over the previous premier, like listening to people. And so sometimes it comes across, if you're used to my relationship with Jason Kenney and you expect that to look the same with Danielle Smith, they're not the same. But I'm not carrying water for her. If you feel like we're cheerleading for the police, another example, there are times where we'll be very hard on the police, and there are other times when this show will simply back the blue, straight up, like when 2 Edmonton police constables were gunned down and murdered responding to a family dispute just several blocks north of our studio. In a circumstance like that, a lot of you were critical. Like some of you were actually critical of our support for the police on that day. I would never apologize for that, ever. And as a matter of fact, you know who you are because I responded to you, and I didn't pull any punches on that response. We make you one promise every single day, and that is that we will keep it real. And if you ever feel like we're not, we invite your criticism. We believe it makes the show and the audience stronger.
Call us on stuff. I mean, that's what
100%.
People keep asking me this on the street and at events and stuff, and you guys think you're experts. I'm like, absolutely not. That's why we have the experts on.
Well, we are experts on some stuff.
We're not investigative journalists. We're not experts on anything. Well,
fantasy hockey, I'm a bit of an expert.
But
music,
that,
but yeah.
But
I hope none of my friends hear that.
That's why we bring the experts on. So if we're just jamming and we say something stupid, by all means, call us on it.
You bet. You know where to find us. Talk at RyanJesperson.com. Hey, coming up on tomorrow's show, we're going to be checking in with the co-hosts of The Discourse. That's Cheryl Oates and Erica Barutis. We're going to play an episode kicking off that tomorrow. Hey, on this podcast they've received questions, like individual video questions from the premier and the official opposition leader. Both of them listeners to the new show. We love seeing that uptick. We love the theme of it. We'll be returning to our so-called roots, talking Alberta politics on Wednesday's Real Talk.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jesperson. Executive producer Josh Dunford.